Good morning, everyone. We're going to give it just a minute or so as people are joining us and we're admitting them to the room. So just hang tight for just a moment.
Good morning, Laurie.
Good morning, Tony. So Tony and I will be your leaders through this session today. And we are going to be working on demonstrating how to set up your ExoLab. And if you've already received your ExoLab, go ahead and put that into the chat. And if you are still waiting to get your ExoLab, put that in the chat too. And that way we'll know how many are outstanding and how many of you got your equipment there ready to start getting set up.
Laurie, do you have ExoLab with you?
I do.
Okay.
I have it right here. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not at the office right now.
No worries. Got you covered.
So.
All right, I think we should go ahead and get started. So today we are going to walk through setup of the ExoLab hardware. And my name is Lori Waters. I'm Vice President for Learning Experiences at Magnitude, and I'm joined by Tony So, who's one of the co-founders. And so it's going to be an exciting mission coming up as we are less than 2 weeks away now from launch of ExoLab 9 on SpaceX 23. We are sending our little red clover seeds back up to the International Space Station for about a month, aiming to achieve root nodulation while in orbit. And so our flight experiment is being prepped by our provider, flight provider, Space Tango. And I can show you the flight experiment a little bit later, but today we're going to focus on setting up our ground trials. So when we do experiments in space, we want to run a ground experiment that matches as much as possible to the flight experiment. And so we are going to conduct these using our ExoLab. Now, your students may be engaging in the experiment as well by setting up their own individual student kits. And we have a demonstration video and lesson on the platform that you can share with them in order for them to learn how to set up their student kits. So today we're going to help you set up your ExoLab. So let me first show you the ExoLab. And I had an experiment running in mine, but I'll take it apart. So it does have this front cover. And there are screws that you can screw it in with. And when you unbox it, you'll notice that you also have this black cover that fits right over the ExoLab. And it even has a slot for the power cord for this cover to sit over. This is really handy if you don't want the images to capture everything that's going on around the ExoLab or what's going on in the background. You can also use this to help with temperature. If your room is cold, then this gives a little bit of insulation and holds in some of the heat. But if it does get too warm, you think you can also take the cover off. But this is a handy tool that comes in your box. So definitely keep this on hand too. And this experiment, we're going to be using the dual tube setup. And so each tube also has a cap. And you'll want to make sure to use these caps because the tubes fit nicely into the rack with these tops on it. If you don't use these tops, then your rack can get a little bit unstable. It's also useful to secure your taps with some of the tape so that they're nice and snug and stay on. And so your rack assembly, I think these were 3D printed, weren't they, Tony? Yeah.
No,
so,
they are not.
Okay.
They are actually laser cut on Delum.
Okay.
It's a really nice material rather than plexiglass. They kind of flex a little bit, so it doesn't break as easy.
Yeah, so they're really nice and sturdy feet pieces that just go in nice into the slots. Very easy to put together and assemble, and then it sits right in the ExoLab device. So let's take a look at the ExoLab, and you can see I have this one unplugged at the moment, but you have your light, LED lights at the top. And we'll show you on the platform that you can actually change the array of lights. You can do dual lighting, where one side is one color, one side is the other color. You can choose from white, magenta, red, green, blue. And so you can even run those types of light experiments. The lighting sensor is the little board that's sticking out here. It's the little green that looks like the computer chip. Okay, and then just above that, you have the little hole is where the temperature and humidity sensor is. Up here at the top is the carbon dioxide sensor, and then the camera here where it takes an image once an hour. Okay, so that's the basic setup. And then here, I'll plug this in so that you can see the screen light up. And there's a little button, a little black button right here underneath the carbon dioxide sensor. You'll want to locate that when you're first setting up your ExoLab. You're initially going to get boxes that go across. And then the first step is going to be getting it onto Wi-Fi. Now mine's going to already be connected to Wi-Fi since I have it set up already. But you'll notice the rack and tubes fit nicely in there. And then it says to hold the button down for network management. And so then you would do that. So let's actually open up, and I'm going to share my screen with you, the PDF with the instructions. And we'll just walk through those since this one's already set up. So give me just a second to share my screen. Go. All right. So we did our unboxing. You can see some of the images here of the magenta light being chosen in that experiment. Okay. So in order to first pair your ExoLab, you have to sign onto the platform. So you should all have a username and password to get logged in. You would go to the class section, and then you're going to connect your ExoLab device here. So there's a serial number on a sticker on the back of your ExoLab, and that's where you'll find your serial number. And you type that into the box and click save. And now this device is tied directly to your account. So you'll hit save and move on down. Now the Wi-Fi setup. Tony, can you walk them through that portion? I think you're a bit of an expert in getting people troubleshooted through the process.
Sure. So when your ExoLab is in the network setup mode, let's see, the first thing you need to do is, okay, let's see, plug in. Now, depending on your school, how your Wi-Fi network is set up. Now, from our experience, most school has their own IT department the way they have it set up is that you need to send them the MAC address of the ExoLab so that they can whitelist your device before your device can be connected to your school Wi-Fi. If that is the case, definitely get a hold of your IT department to share that MAC address with them. Now, most of the time, we don't share that MAC address for your device with you. All you have to do is send me an email, and we will share that with you. So it's the idea is very simple. For example, if you have a printer at your school, and the school doesn't want any devices, just any devices to be able to connect to the Wi-Fi network. So in order for them to do that, they want you to send them what kind of a device, what is the MAC address of that device to be connected to the Wi-Fi. So it is the same case at this point. So once they have it whitelisted, and also if you are connecting to your home Wi-Fi at home, you don't have to go through all that. All you have to do is type in your Wi-Fi network name, and you will be good. So once you are in the Wi-Fi setup mode, make sure you have a second computer with you or your phone, iPhone, Android, or whatever. So connect your laptop or your phone to the ExoLab hotspot. So when the ExoLab is in the network setup mode, it will broadcast its own Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi name is called ExoLab. So when you use your iPhone or Android, just look for the network that is named ExoLab. Connect to it. Once you connect to it, it will ask you a password. Sometimes it doesn't, but most of the time it does. You type in the ExoLab setup password, all one word, all lowercase. And once you are connected to the ExoLab Wi-Fi network, then you go to a web page, Google or Safari. Then in the URL, you type in 10.0.0.1. And once you type that in, a credential login page will present it to you. And right there, you type in your Wi-Fi network name under the SSID. And then you type in your Wi-Fi password. And be sure that your Wi-Fi network name is exactly the way you have it, or at school, upper and lowercase sensitive. So you type that in, and then you hit submit. And once you hit submit, the ExoLab will reboot, and it will go through the reboot process. But this time, you don't press the button and just allow the ExoLab to go into the experiment mode. And most of the time, it takes maybe a 1 or 2 cycle before your ExoLab is connected to your school Wi-Fi or your home Wi-Fi. And if it doesn't, do this whole process again. You might have misspelled your Wi-Fi network name, or you might have misspelled the password, and go through that step one more time.
So sometimes the Wi-Fi, getting that connected, that can be the trouble spot that we often find with people. And so as Tony said, making sure that you've spelled it exactly correctly, done that upper and lower case, any special characters with the Wi-Fi name or with the password. So if you were setting this up at your school, you definitely want to be in touch with your IT department, since they may prevent the devices from connecting initially. And so you can share this PDF with them as the instructions to help you through the setup process. And once you get it connected to Wi-Fi, it'll automatically work from then on. You should not have a problem with it. Obviously, if you have any questions or need additional help through it, you're always welcome to contact us here at Magnitude.
Right.
Now,
there are two more things I wanted to add. Now, while you are talking to your IT department, you might even want to ask them to whitelist our domain name. Quite often we send out a notification or instruction on how to make some modification or the docking of the spacecraft to the ISS, is happening. So quite often we send out those kind of last minute news. So it's very important that our email will get to your school email addresses. Quite often that our email coming out from our email system, it will get trapped in the spam folders. And it can be very frustrating. You're not getting any notification from us. And yeah, especially during the experiment, we send out a lot of last minute news and whatever.
Yeah, so as that day approaches, as we're reaching preparation for pre-flight and then launch and then getting to the ISS and docking, we do send out updates and you will not want to miss those. Sometimes we'll have last minute video calls that we're able to do to share particular news or video or information that's been shared with us, and such as when our experiment gets loaded up, taken out of the cargo and onto the ISS. So you'll want to stay tuned and be sure to get all of those emails and communications about the exciting things that you can share with your students and even participate live in some of our sessions. Now I started to go on, and let me just show you, once you get your device connected to Wi-Fi, the way that you're going to start your experiment is, again, going back to your account and logging in. And then here under ExoLab, I can see where my dark trial that I had set up. So I'm going to, at the moment, I'm going to edit this one and end it, actually, because we're going to start up some new trials. And so to start my new experiment, when I go to classes, I'm going to select my class. And then this is where you're going to get your startup of your experiment. So it's under, yes.
We're still looking at your PDF.
Oh, well, that didn't share the right screen. Let me stop sharing and go back and reshare. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, here we go. So here we have ExoLab, and it shows just what current experiments or inactive experiments. So that place that you're going to set up your experiment, you want to click on classes. Okay, and you select whichever class you're doing it for. And then this is where you're going to find the place, the button that says Start Experiment under Classes. So we'll hit Start Experiment. And then you'll want to go get your test tubes prepped, your auger prepped, your seeds, get everything assembled before you go through this process, because once you do, you are activating your lab and it will start collecting data and start taking pictures. So up here at the top, we are going to, there's going to be an option for ExoLab 9. Right now, we're still running pre-flight ground trials. You can see ExoLab 8 ISS. So when we're on station, you'll see an option here for ExoLab 9 ISS. you give your experiment a name. My start date, I'm starting it up today. Now you could, if you wanted to start it on a different day, you want to give yourself the afternoon to set up the test tubes and such, you could say, well, let's start it up tomorrow. But pretty much when you get your seeds into your lab, you want it to start collecting data and taking images, especially if you put the seeds directly into the media. Those little red clover seeds, they love germinating within sometimes about even 12 hours. So you'll want to see those initial stages of development. We're going to keep this experiment public so that we can compare it. There are times that we use Petri plates in the lab, but this experiment for ExoLab 9 will be the dual tubes. So we'll select this option. And now we're given lighting choices. So as I mentioned before, you could have 2 different colors running if you wish. And do a light comparison. That is on its own is a very useful experiment and investigation to be able to discuss with students how the wavelengths within that visible light spectrum may affect plant growth. Gets really deep if you're in those higher level sciences in high school. You can really dig deep with the effect of light and light color. So for this one, I'm going to choose magenta for both of them. So left and right tube. I'm going to keep my light intensity at 10. Now, sometimes if my lab, I'm here in Florida and Florida is super hot. And so even in my house, it seems to get the temperature up a bit. And so one way you could control the temperature is to bring down that light intensity just a little bit. But I usually start my experiments at the light intensity of 10. And then our photo period is how many hours do we want that magenta light to be on and how many hours will then it be off. So the 16 is 16 hours of magenta light, and then therefore it will have 8 hours of dark. It will still be collecting data throughout that dark period with all the sensors, and it will be taking images. It's just the lighting will go from magenta to then not lit up. And then we'll click Save Our Experiment. So it will begin collecting data and images. And when you come back to this screen, you'll be able to see those initial ones, give it a little time to kick into the system. And you can always then go to get back to that page is see under ExoLab. Now the new experiment that I just started is here as my Florida ground trial. And I can compare to other schools that have started with this particular ground trial. What setup did they use? So you can see some of them experimented with some of the bio-straight felt, some of it angled the media, some kept the media flat. And your day one is day one for everyone else, even if they started a few weeks ago. And then you'll be able to track along and compare around the world to other ExoLabs. All right. I'll stop there and open it up for questions. If you have a question, you can unmute your microphone or type a question into the chat, and we're happy to discuss the ExoLab hardware setup. Later this evening, Eastern time, 6 p.m., I'll be demonstrating more on the ExoLab platform, the Magnitude platform, and showing the lessons and how to get that portion set up. But this is our hardware and experiment setup.
Thank you very much, Lori, for your presentation. I would like to put a small question regarding light setting. Is it possible to set another pattern of illumination? Let's say 2 hours dark, 2 hours light, again 2 hours dark, and again. So not 2 periods which should be covered 24 hours. Is it possible? Thank you.
At this time with the programming of the ExoLab, it runs on the 24-hour cycle. So you have to choose a combination of light that's within that 24. If you were to choose only 2 hours of light, it would then do 22 hours of dark. We are considering for future versions of the ExoLab greater flexibility in being able to change those settings, but that's not available for this particular experiment. We anticipate on the ISS that we're going to use a 16-hour photo period for the flight experiment, and therefore you'll likely want to match that in order to reduce the variables and differences. But that's something that we've heard from folks as that they would be interested in having that ability to change up the photo period. So we'll definitely consider that for the future. Let me just quickly share my screen one more time and show you what the inside of the ExoLab will look like. So for ExoLab 8, our setup was similar. And so you can see here, we will be actually flying a 4U ExoLab, and part of that is to accommodate a reservoir, which will be in the next picture. So you can see on the right-hand side, we have we had enough space to put 3 test tubes in there. They're a little bit smaller in diameter than the ones in the ExoLab, but that's okay. We're still using the same glass, same material, same agar, same seats, same rhizobia. And then here you can see that they will be kind of laying on their side, but we know that our red clover are extremely phototropic, and those stems and leaves will grow towards the light. The black box in the photo is called the juice box. And this is where it's holding a very small amount of water and then our fixative for the end of the experiment. Down on the right-hand photo, you can see a green, very narrow tube going down the back of the test tube. And that is in order to deliver the water and the fixative into the flight experiment. Since I had mentioned before, those clover seeds like to germinate very fast within the media. When we get boxed up, sealed, handed over to NASA, loaded onto the SpaceX 23 cargo Dragon, and then to launch and get to the space station, that takes several days, 5 to 7 days. And so we don't want our clover seeds growing in the dark at that time. So in the flight experiment, we want to delay germination, and this is the method that we're using, is attaching them to a little strip of biostrate felt, and then the first thing that happens when we power up, we give it a command, and it will deliver 0.5 milliliter of water through that green tube, wet the felt, and then the seeds will start growing from there. I think that was the last one. And then this will be what we see on the platform once the experiment's powered up and we're able to do a comparison of what's happening in our ground trial. On the platform, you can see an experiment page on the left, and then that center picture is the one from the ISS. So our flight experiment box varies just a little bit in order to fly according to NASA standards and to be completely sealed, since it does have bacteria in it. We have to be sensitive to that. But it is still collecting all the same data that we're collecting. Are there other questions? Thank you for that question, by the way.
You know, that was a very good questions. I never really thought about beyond the 24 life cycle, I mean a day cycle. So is there anywhere on Earth that we can have a multiple life cycle, day and night cycle, more than one cycle within 24 hours period?
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how the plants respond to that. We know that often organisms respond to the moon, to the lunar cycle, to the solar cycle, with the tilt of the earth and the seasons even, right? Our daylight is getting shorter. And so on Earth, we're still going to have that 24-hour cycle of day and night. But if we were to put an ExoLab in the Arctic or Antarctica, then we could end up with 24 hours of daylight or almost 24 hours of darkness, right, at certain times of the year. And so that would be that'd be fascinating. I think we should go. I volunteer to go to the analog and in either location. Happy to do that. And so that would be fun. But if we were to take an ExoLab into space, right? If we take it to a different planet, we think about what the cycle of how that would be different. That'd be a fun conversation to have with students on what would be your day-night cycle on different celestial bodies like the moon or Venus or Mars. And so that's a fun one. Vivid imaginations we have here at Magnitude, which is fun.
Right.
Well, I don't see any questions in the chat. And if no one else has a question, thank you for joining us today for this professional development session. We'll be taking this video and adding it to the platform. In fact, all of our professional development sessions are available on the platform currently under a professional development tab under lessons. I can show that to you real quick. So if there are sessions from last week that you missed and you're not sure if you can make them this week, I know a lot of teachers are into pre-planning. And so you have a lot ahead of you in this coming week as you're preparing for students, or maybe you already have students in your room. So here on the platform, under lessons and ExoLab, we have the, clicked off of it, ExoLab. First thing up is your ExoLab Educator PD. And here's where we're going to put all the resources through all the PD sessions. We have the videos from last week. We have that PDF document that we showed today with the guide and the procedures. And through each session, we have slides if they were presented, as well as any other supplemental materials. So those are there as resources, and if we can assist you in any other way, please feel free to reach out by email. I'm Lori at Magnitude.io and then Tony at Magnitude.io.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a great day. Happy Monday.
Thank you also. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.